While my family chased money and appearances, I was the only one who showed up for my dying grandmother. What followed was devastating family betrayal, a brutal family drama, and a lesson in revenge and justice, because the person who cared the most inherited everything. My family always treated me like an embarrassment because I didn't care about their money or status. But the look on their faces when Grandma's lawyer read her final will was worth every second of their ridicule. They thought their corporate success guaranteed them the inheritance, never realizing that Grandma was watching who actually cared for her. My name is Nevaeh Martinez, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the stain on the pristine white carpet of the Martinez family legacy. To understand the gravity of what happened in that lawyer's office, you first have to understand the people I share DNA with. My father, Robert, is a corporate shark who measures human value in net worth and stock options. My mother, Eleanor, is a socialite who treats charity galas as battlegrounds for social dominance and views wrinkles as a personal failure. Then there are my siblings. Julian, my older brother, followed in my father's footsteps, developing a god complex before he could even grow a beard. And Bianca, my younger sister, who turned her entire existence into a curated online brand, where reality was just an inconvenience that could be edited out with a filter. And then there was me. I was the mistake, the anomaly. While they spent their weekends at the country club or flying to Milan for Fashion Week, I was volunteering at the local animal shelter or reading books in the library. When I decided to become a special education teacher, my father actually stopped speaking to me for 3 months. He told me that I was wasting my potential on people who didn't matter, and that a Martinez does not wipe noses for a living. We lived in 2 different worlds that just happened to occupy the same zip code. They lived in the main estate, a sprawling mansion that felt more like a museum than a home, filled with expensive art that no one looked at and furniture you weren't allowed to sit on. I lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment across town, driving a 10-year-old sedan that rattled when I went over 40 miles per hour. Every family gathering was an exercise in humiliation. I remember one Thanksgiving vividly. It was about 2 years ago. I had arrived wearing a simple dress I had bought on sale, feeling relatively good about myself. I walked into the grand dining room where the table was set with crystal and silver that cost more than my annual salary. Julian was already pouring himself a glass of vintage scotch. He looked me up and down and smirked. He asked if I had parked my rust bucket around the back so the neighbors wouldn't think the cleaning staff was having a party. Bianca laughed, snapping a photo of her wine glass for her followers, not even looking up as she told me that my dress was so last season it was practically vintage, but not the cool kind. My mother sighed, the kind of sigh that carries the weight of 1,000 disappointments. She told me to go to the kitchen and see if the cook needed help, implying that was where I belonged. My father didn't even acknowledge my presence until the 3rd course, only to ask if I was still working that little job of mine or if I was ready to join the real world. I endured it. I always endured it. I endured it for one reason and one reason only: Grandma Rose. Grandma Rose was the matriarch of the family. The money, the empire, the legacy, it all started with her and my late grandfather. They had built the company from the ground up, starting with a small hardware store and expanding into a real estate and construction conglomerate. But unlike her children and grandchildren, Grandma Rose never forgot what it was like to struggle. She never forgot the value of $1 or the importance of kindness. However, in her later years, her health began to decline. She developed mobility issues and her heart grew weak. She needed constant care. And this is where the true nature of the Martinez family revealed itself. To my parents and siblings, Grandma Rose became a burden. She was an obstacle, a liability. She wasn't useful for networking anymore. She couldn't host parties. She was just an old woman taking up space in the east wing of the mansion. They hired nurses to watch her, of course, because they had the money, but they never visited her. They lived under the same roof, yet days would go by without them poking their heads into her room. I was the only one. Every day after school, I would drive over to the estate. I would park my rattling car around the back, not because I was ashamed, but because it was closer to Grandma's entrance. I would sit with her for hours. We would play cards, watch old movies, or just talk. I would brush her hair, lotion her hands, and listen to her stories about the early days, before the money corrupted everything. She saw everything. Grandma Rose was sharp as a tack despite her failing body. She knew my father was only waiting for her to die so he could liquidate her personal assets to fund a risky merger. She knew my mother was already eyeing her jewelry collection. She knew Julian and Bianca only came to see her when they wanted a check signed. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, about 6 months before she passed, I was sitting by her bedside reading to her. She stopped me mid-sentence and took my hand. Her grip was weak, her skin like paper, but her eyes were intense. She asked me why I let them treat me the way they did. She asked why I kept coming back to a house where I was mocked and belittled. I told her the truth. I told her that I didn't come for them. I came for her. I told her that family isn't about the money or the house or the status. It's about being there. I told her I loved her, and that was enough. She looked at me for a long time, her eyes welling up with tears. She told me that I was the only true Martinez left. She said I was the only one who had inherited her heart. Then she said something that I didn't think much of at the time. She said she was going to make things right. I assumed she meant she would speak to my father, maybe ask him to be nicer to me. I never imagined what she actually had in planning. As Grandma's condition worsened, the family's neglect turned into outright cruelty. There was a week when she was hospitalized with pneumonia. I took unpaid leave from work to sleep in the chair next to her hospital bed. I was there for 4 days straight, showering in the hospital bathroom and eating vending machine food. During those 4 days, my parents visited once. They stayed for 15 minutes. My father spent the entire time on his phone, yelling at an assistant about a contract. My mother stood by the door, refusing to come closer because she claimed the smell of the hospital made her nauseous. Julian and Bianca didn't come at all. Julian was in Vegas for a bachelor party, and Bianca posted a story about how sad she was, using a black and white filter on a selfie of her crying, captioned, "Pray for Nana," while she was actually at a spa day. When the doctor said there was nothing more they could do and sent her home for hospice care, the atmosphere in the house changed. It wasn't somber, it was anticipatory. The vultures were circling. My mother started bringing interior designers into the house to plan renovations for the East Wing, even while Grandma was still breathing in the bedroom. My father started holding closed-door meetings with his financial advisors. They were already spending the money. They were already erasing her. I spent the last night holding her hand. It was just me and her. The rest of the family was at a gala. They said they couldn't cancel because it would look bad for the company image. They left their dying mother alone to go drink champagne and network. Grandma Rose passed away at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was the one who closed her eyes. I was the one who called the nurse. I was the one who sat in the silence of that massive, cold room and cried until my throat burned. When I called my parents to tell them, my father sounded annoyed that I had woken him up. He asked if I had called the funeral home yet. No tears, no, "oh my God," just logistics. The funeral was a spectacle. It was exactly what Grandma would have hated. It was a massive production with hundreds of guests, most of whom barely knew her. There were towering floral arrangements, a string quartet, and a caterer that served lobster tails. My family played the part of the grieving survivors perfectly. My mother sobbed dramatically into a silk handkerchief whenever a camera was pointed at her. My father gave a eulogy that sounded like a corporate press release, talking about her vision and investment in the future, but never about her laugh or her kindness. I sat in the back row. I wore a simple black dress. I didn't speak to anyone. I just watched them perform their grief, feeling a mixture of sadness and intense anger. They were burying a woman they hadn't bothered to know in years, and they were using her death as a PR opportunity. After the funeral came the reading of the will. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. The golden ticket. We were summoned to the office of Mr. Henderson, Grandma's personal attorney. Mr. Henderson was an old-school lawyer, a man of few words and steel principles. He had been with my grandfather since the hardware store days. He despised my father, and the feeling was mutual. The office was imposing, filled with dark mahogany and the scent of old paper. My family arrived in a fleet of luxury cars. My father was wearing a suit that cost more than my car. My mother was dripping in pearls, Grandma's pearls, I noticed, which she had already taken from the safe before the will was even read. Julian was checking his watch, complaining that he had a tea time at 1. Bianca was live tweeting the experience, captioning it, "The end of an era, new beginnings." I sat in a corner chair, away from them. My father glared at me as he sat down at the head of the conference table. He asked why I was even there. He said that Grandma probably left me a few trinkets or maybe set up a small trust for my charity work, and that I could have just waited for the check in the mail. Mr. Henderson walked in carrying a thick leather folder. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and looked at each of us in turn. His gaze lingered on me for a moment, softening just a fraction before turning icy cold as he looked at my father. He cleared his throat and began. "I am here to read the last will and testament of Rose Martinez. This document was drafted and finalized 3 months ago, superseding all previous wills." My father shifted in his seat. 3 months ago? I didn't know she updated it. "Rose was a private woman," Mr. Henderson said sharply. "She observed much more than she spoke." He began with the minor bequests. She left generous sums to the housekeeping staff, the gardener, and her favorite nurses. My family rolled their eyes during this part, tapping their fingers impatiently. My mother whispered to Julian that it was ridiculous to give so much money to the help. Then Mr. Henderson turned to the family. "To my daughter-in-law, Eleanor," he read, "I leave my collection of vintage hats. Perhaps they will help you cover the emptiness you carry in your head." The room went silent. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Excuse me?" she screeched. "Is this a joke?" Mr. Henderson didn't look up. He continued, "To my grandson, Julian, I leave you my late husband's first toolbox. It is my hope that you might one day learn the value of hard work, though I doubt it. You receive no financial assets." Julian stood up, his face turning red. "What the hell is this? A toolbox? I'm an investment banker." "Sit down," Mr. Henderson commanded. The authority in his voice was terrifying. Julian sank back into his chair, stunned. "To my granddaughter, Bianca," Henderson read, "I leave you my antique mirrors. Use them to look at yourself, since that is your favorite pastime. You receive no financial assets." Bianca dropped her phone. It hit the floor with a crack. She looked around wildly, as if waiting for someone to yell, "Cut." Then came my father. He was gripping the arms of his chair so hard his knuckles were white. He knew something was wrong. He could feel the earth shifting beneath him. "To my son, Robert," Henderson read, his voice steady and unforgiving. "You have spent your life chasing wealth, yet you never understood what it meant to be rich. You neglected me in my final years. You treated your own daughter with contempt because she did not worship at the altar of greed. You have proven yourself unworthy of the legacy your father and I built." My father was trembling. "Read the bequest, Henderson. Cut the lecture." "Very well," Henderson said. "To Robert Martinez, I leave nothing. Furthermore, I have instructed my trustees to remove you from the board of directors of Martinez Enterprises, effective immediately, citing the morality clause in the company bylaws regarding the neglect of a dependee." My father exploded. He slammed his fist on the table. "This is insanity. She was senile. I'll contest this. I'll bury you in court, Henderson. You manipulated her. I have video evidence of Rose signing this will, fully lucid, explaining her reasons in detail," Henderson said calmly. "And I have the logs of your visits, or lack thereof, to the estate over the last 5 years. You won't win, Robert." Then the room turned to me. I was frozen. I hadn't expected any of this. I thought she might leave them less or maybe give a lot to charity, but to cut them out completely. And finally, Henderson said, his voice softening, to my granddaughter, Nevaeh. My family turned to look at me. Their eyes were filled with venom, with shock, with pure hatred. Nevaeh, Henderson read, you were the only one who loved me for me. You were the only one who held my hand when I was scared. You are the only one who understands that kindness is the greatest currency. Therefore, I leave the entirety of my estate to you. The silence that followed was deafening. This includes, Henderson listed, the Martinez estate, the entire art collection, the investment portfolio, the liquid cash reserves, and the controlling interest in Martinez Enterprises.
My mother let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. My father looked like he was having a stroke. Julian was staring at me with his mouth open. Everything? My father whispered. She gave everything to her? Everything, Henderson confirmed. The estimated value of the estate is $145 million. My father lunged across the table. You ungrateful little witch, he screamed at me. You poisoned her mind. You spent all that time over there whispering lies about us. I didn't flinch. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small in front of him. I felt powerful. I stood up slowly. I didn't whisper lies, Dad, I said, my voice steady. I just held her hand. I listened to her. I treated her like a human being. You were too busy counting her money to notice she was dying. Give it back, Julian demanded, standing up to join our father. Sign it over to us. You don't know how to manage money. You're a teacher, for God's sake. You'll ruin the company in a week. Actually, Mr. Henderson interjected, Rose anticipated this. The inheritance is placed in a trust. Nevaeh has full access to the funds and assets, but the business operations will be overseen by a board of advisors she appoints. She has the power to fire anyone she chooses, including family members employed by the company. My father's face went pale. He realized the implication. He wasn't just disinherited, he was unemployed. He was living in a house I now owned, working for a company I now controlled. Nevaeh, my mother said, her voice suddenly changing. She switched from screeching to a sickly sweet trembling tone. She walked over and tried to grab my hand. Nevaeh, honey, look at us. We're your family. Grandma was confused. You know that. You wouldn't do this to us. We can share. We can work this out. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had criticized my clothes, my career, and my life for 30 years. I looked at the woman who let her own mother die alone because she didn't want to smell the hospital. I pulled my hand away. You're right, Mother, I said. We are family, and that's the only reason I'm not having security escort you out of this office right now. I turned to Mr. Henderson. What happens next? Well, the lawyer smiled, a genuine shark-like smile. First, we transfer the titles. Then you decide what you want to do with your tenants. Tenants? Bianca asked, her voice shaking. You live in the Martinez estate, my estate. The meeting ended in chaos. My father stormed out, threatening to sue everyone in the city. My mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing about how she would be the laughingstock of the club. Julian and Bianca looked like children who had just been told Santa Claus was dead. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. I didn't change my lifestyle immediately. I still drove my old car to school. I still graded papers at my kitchen table. But the power dynamic had shifted tectonically. My father tried to fight the will. He hired a team of lawyers. But Mr. Henderson was thorough. The video testimony of Grandma Rose was damning. In it, she spoke clearly and heartbreakingly about her family's neglect. If that video went public, it wouldn't just lose them the case, it would destroy their social standing forever. They dropped the lawsuit. Then came the reckoning. I called a family meeting at the estate. I sat at the head of the table in Grandma's chair. My parents and siblings sat on the sides, looking nervous and haggard. "Here is how things are going to work," I told them. "I am not going to kick you out on the street. That would be cruel, and unlike you, I am not cruel." They visibly relaxed. My mother even managed a weak smile. "However," I continued, "the free ride is over. Dad, you are officially removed from the company. I've already appointed a new CEO, someone who actually cares about the employees and the long-term vision, not just quarterly bonuses. You will receive a modest pension, enough to live comfortably, but the private jets, the corporate cards, the expense accounts, they are gone." My father stared at the table, defeated. "Mom," I said, "you can stay in the house, but the staff is being reduced. We don't need 5 maids for 4 people. And the gala budget? Cut. If you want to throw parties, you can pay for them yourself." "But I have no income," she protested. "Then maybe you should get a job," I suggested, "or sell some of those vintage hats." I turned to my siblings. "Julian, Bianca, you are both adults. You have degrees that Dad paid for. It's time to use them. You have 90 days to find your own apartments and move out. I will pay your security deposits and first month's rent. After that, you are on your own." "You can't do that," Bianca cried. "I can't live in an apartment. Where will I put my clothes?" "I suggest you donate the ones you don't need," I said. "The tax write-off will be helpful." "And Julian," I added, "the Ferrari goes back. The lease payments were being made by the company. That stops today." Julian looked like he was about to vomit. It has been 6 months since the will reading. The transformation has been incredible. My father, stripped of his power, has aged 10 years. He spends his days golfing at a public course because he can't afford the country club dues anymore. He's bitter, but he's also quieter. He knows he has no leverage. My mother is struggling to adapt to a life without unlimited spending. She's actually started gardening, mostly because she fired the landscapers in a fit of rage and then realized she had to do it herself. Julian and Bianca moved out last month. Julian is working as a junior analyst at a rival firm, an entry-level job where nobody cares who his father is. He drives a Honda now. Bianca had to get a job as a social media manager for a local boutique. She actually has to work for her likes now. As for me, I'm still teaching. I love my students and I love my job, but now I can do so much more. I used a portion of the inheritance to fully fund the special education department at my school. We have new tablets, a sensory room, and all the supplies we need. I paid off the mortgages of 3 of my fellow teachers who were struggling. I also established the Nevaeh Martinez Foundation, dedicated to elderly care. We fund programs that provide companionship for seniors who have no family, ensuring that no one has to feel the loneliness my grandmother felt. I still live in my apartment, though I did buy a newer car, a reliable SUV with heated seats. I visit the estate on weekends. I walk through the halls, and sometimes I sit in Grandma's room. I changed nothing in there. It still smells like her lavender perfume. Last week, I had dinner with my family at the estate. It was awkward, stiff, and quiet, but for the first time, there was no mockery. No one made fun of my shoes. No one asked when I was going to get a real job. My father asked me to pass the salt, and he said, "Please." My mother asked how my students were doing. They are scared of me, yes. They are resentful, absolutely. But they also respect me. Or at least, they respect the power I hold. Grandma Rose was right. True wealth isn't about the numbers in a bank account. It's about character. It's about how you treat people when you have nothing to gain from them. My family spent their lives investing in stocks and bonds, while I invested in love and time. When the market crashed, their portfolio was worthless. Mine paid out dividends for a lifetime. Sometimes when I'm sitting in the boardroom signing off on a new charitable grant, or when I'm watching my father actually have to check the price on a menu before ordering, I think about that look on their faces in Mr. Henderson's office. They called me the black sheep. They called me a failure. They called me poor. But in the end, I was the only one who inherited the most valuable thing Grandma Rose had to give, her legacy,
And, unlike them, I intend to make it mean something. Every time I sign my name now, I feel her with me, and I know that somewhere she's watching her arrogant son mowing his own lawn and her vain daughter clipping coupons, and she is laughing her head off. Justice is served, and it tastes sweeter than any expensive champagne they ever drank. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a board meeting to attend, and then I have to grade spelling tests. It turns out you really can have it all, as long as you have a heart first.